Fox 5 News at 6 starts right now.
One of the strongest Atlanta hurricanes ever recorded slams into the Bahamas. Georgia officials are now preparing for Hurricane Dorian as it makes its way to the Georgia coast.
Governor Brian Kemp has issued mandatory evacuations for 6 counties along the coast. Those counties include Glenn, Chatham, Bryant, Liberty, McIntosh, and Camden County.
Forecasters expect the storm to make landfall in Florida within the next 72 hours. Dorian is now a Category 4 storm.
We have team coverage across the Georgia coast, making sure you are prepared. Let's start with Fox 5 Storm Team meteorologist Jeff Hill with the latest on the path of Dorian.
All righty, here's a look at what we know about Dorian right now. It is still a Category 4 hurricane with winds of 145 miles an hour, and it is barely moving at all. And that's been all day long today. The only change is the eye. The eye was a little bit smaller. Now it's starting to expand a little bit as the storm is weakening, and the hurricane force winds should start to grow a little bit farther out from the center as the storm gets a little bit larger now that it's weakening. Here's a look at the hurricane and the 5 o'clock advisory. Winds of 145 miles per hour. Again, it is stationary, hasn't moved at all. 105 miles east of West Palm Beach, Florida. Now, official track is going to keep it offshore, but it's going to get awfully close, maybe out around the Cape Canaveral area at some point as we get into 2 a.m. Wednesday morning. Winds of about 125 miles an hour. So the weekend down to a Category 3. Then it curves a little bit more to the north right here and kind of parallels our coastline all the way up toward Charleston. Now, as it passes Georgia, it's going to be a good 80 miles or so offshore. So that should keep the hurricane force winds offshore, but the tropical storm force winds, maybe above 30-40 miles an hour, are going to make it onshore. So it's going to be a very windy pass as it moves through on Wednesday and Thursday. Also, storm surge and heavy rainfall here in Georgia. That'll be the case too for the Carolinas as that continues to move all the way up to the north and east. Outside right now, currently we've got 92. It is a hot evening. Temperatures tonight only dropping down to around 80 or so by 11 o'clock. We'll have more on Dorian and our 7-day forecast for you coming up in a few minutes.
All right, Jeff, thank you. We have crews spread out across the Georgia coast and around Metro Atlanta as the state prepares for what Hurricane Dorian may bring.
One of those areas is Tybee Island, where a busy holiday weekend has turned into people getting out of town due to a mandatory evacuation. Storm Team meteorologist Ryan Beasley is live from the beach there with more on what's going on. Ryan?
Well, Tom, it's a nice day here at the beach, just a little bit on the breezy side. A lot of folks are still out here enjoying the elements of their Labor Day weekend. We've seen crowds come and go throughout the afternoon, at least since we've been here. But look at the surf. My goodness, the Atlantic Ocean is absolutely roaring as Dorian continues to turn up the Atlantic coast. But as I mentioned, a lot of people out here swimming, enjoying their Labor Day weekend. We did see some sea breeze thunderstorms earlier this afternoon. Those are not related to Dorian. However, the bigger impacts will come based on which way Dorian goes.
Ultimately, what's going to make or break us is how close this thing comes to us. I mean, like I said, we have a very real possibility that we get more towards the center of that cone and that thing gets very close to us. That is not outside the realm of possibility.
And you've heard meteorologist Jeff Hill talk about the different scenarios within Hurricane Dorian, depending on if it stays offshore or not. Doesn't really matter. We're still going to have hurricane force winds along the eastern seaboard. We are going to have that storm surge, but obviously the closer that eye gets to the shore will have greater impacts. Now, mandatory evacuations were in order as of noon today, so residents are already starting to board up some of their businesses as they continue to prepare for this major hurricane. They're rather err on the side of caution, and that's why you're seeing businesses close, and that's why you're seeing businesses start to board up. But all eyes will be on Dorian over the next couple of days. For now, it is windy out here, but the rain is still off to our well to our south and our east. But we'll continue to monitor the developing conditions and changing conditions here in Tybee Island throughout the week. Meteorologist Ryan Beasley reporting live on Tybee Island, Fox 5 News.
All right, Ryan, thank you. Now, it's worth mentioning again, 6 coastal counties in Georgia are under a mandatory evacuation order from Governor Brian Kemp. And starting tomorrow morning, The Georgia Department of Transportation will reverse traffic on I-16 to help everyone get out of that area quickly. Contraflow, as it's called, begins at 8 a.m. GDOT officials say they'll have barricades and State Patrol troopers in every entrance point to make sure drivers do not go the wrong way. They also brought in extra Champ units and Hero units here in Metro Atlanta to respond to problems and additional cameras to help them monitor real-time conditions.
So we'll be able to, from this building, monitor what's going on throughout that corridor to be able to make sure that if there is an issue, if there is an accident, any sort of out of the ordinary backup, that we can send those Champ operators into that area. So they've got eyes on the ground there, we've got eyes in the skies here, and it's going to take everyone to really get this traffic flowing out of our coastal region.
The DOT warns drivers only to travel in actual lanes to allow for emergency traffic on the shoulders. Tom?
In just the last hour, Portia, Governor Brian Kemp held his final briefing of the day about the storm. The governor made stops in coastal Georgia earlier today and assured residents that the state is ready for whatever Hurricane Dorian may dish out. Fox 5's Claire Sims joins us live at Peachtree DeKalb Airport. And Claire, the governor wants Georgians to make sure that they are prepared.
Yeah, Tom, the governor touched down here at PDK just a little bit before 5 o'clock this afternoon after visiting areas down in coastal Georgia. Now, as we've already reminded you, there are 6 counties that are currently under mandatory evacuation orders and another 12 that are declared as emergencies. Now, Dorian is a Category 4 hurricane, but Governor Kemp and other state officials say the storm is still very much a threat to Georgia. Their primary concerns are about flooding and storm surge. The governor says he understands that some people along the coast may be what he said hurricane weary and reluctant to leave their homes, but he encourages them to pack up and get out anyway.
We are asking everyone to please heed those warnings and evacuate if at all possible. Given the risk of strong winds and potential flooding in these areas, if coastal residents decide not to evacuate, and I want to be very clear, they will be on their own if first responders are unable to reach them.
Now, the governor says he is a little bit concerned that because this storm has been moving so slowly, and we've been talking about it for several days now, that people might think that they still have plenty of time to get out, but he wants people to know the time to move is now. We are live at Peachtree DeKalb Airport. Claire Sims, Fox 5 News.
All right, Claire, the Red Cross is working hard to prepare for Dorian's arrival. The organization says it's mobilized around 1,600 volunteers and shipped out nearly 100 truckloads of emergency relief supplies to Florida, parts of Georgia, and parts of the Carolinas. One thing officials want storm victims to be aware of is the difference between a Red Cross evacuation center and an emergency shelter.
An evacuation center is intended to be a place to safely ride out a storm. So for those, we want people going to an evacuation center to bring items that will make them comfortable with them. And then after the storm, if you are in a Red Cross emergency shelter, that's where the cots, blankets, and other hygiene items will be available for you.
For now, Red Cross officials say they have enough volunteers and that they now need financial help. You can learn more about how to do that on our website at fox5atlanta.com. Portia?
Well, Southern Baptist Church members are providing supplies for people affected by Hurricane Dorian. Organizers staged a Send Relief truck in Alpharetta today. And they fill the truck with supplies most critical for the first 72 hours after a hurricane. The president of Send Relief tells us they also have home repair equipment on that truck.
We also have supplies to be able to do immediate repairs on roofs. So we have rolled roofing that we can go in and repair over 400 homes that are actually on, the supplies are on this truck. We have mold remediation equipment where you can go in for a home that's been just doused with water or flooded or had roof damage and leaks, where we can stop and inhibit any mold from growing in that home.
Organizers say more trucks are on the way. Houses submerged, roofs ripped off, and power lines toppled. We're learning new details about the path of destruction left by Hurricane Dorian. But many families still remain in the unknown, anxiously waiting to hear from loved ones who decided to brave out the storm in the Bahamas. Fox 5's Emily Ikeda spoke with some of those nervous Bahamians. Emily?
Well, that's right, Portia. And for the families who are still waiting to hear from loved ones, the silence just intensified. The Bahamas Prime Minister announced at least 5 people died in the Abaco Islands due to Hurricane Dorian.
That height has to be about 20 to 25 feet above sea level.
Houses submerged, roofs shredded, cars tossed. New details on Hurricane Dorian's path of destruction trickle in Monday as the monster storm continues to inch across the Bahamas. Bahamians now living in the U.S. watch in horror from afar.
I will tell you, every time there's a hurricane, I probably don't sleep more than about 2 hours a night.
Hello, good afternoon.
Christopher Roker breathes a sigh of relief every time a family member or friend braving out the storm in his birthplace answers his phone call.
On our island, we've had overnight heavy rains that created flooding.
But many are not as lucky as Roker.
Is that near Guanakee?
Breton Elliott and her daughter Maddie remain glued to her phone, Bahamas online forums, and Facebook, desperately awaiting updates on Great Guanakee, part of the Abaco Islands. The silence intensifying after the Bahamas Prime Minister reported at least 5 deaths in the Abaco Islands.
It was starting to pick up the winds, and then the phone service went out. Just from no one to hear from a satellite phone or anything, it's just nerve-wracking.
Elliot last heard from her husband Paul Merowitz Sunday at around 11 a.m. Since then, their home has been pummeled with historic wind gusts of more than 220 miles per hour. She says her heart breaks as videos surface from neighboring islands. Meanwhile, silence from Guanakee.
It's not been fun. It's just been hard to watch and not know anything.
And hurricanes are something Elliot and other islanders regularly have to deal with. So she was actually considering even staying, but she says Dorian morphed into a beast she never could have foreseen and thus is grateful her daughter is out of harm's way. At the live desk, Emily Ikeda, Fox 5 News.
Yeah, so hard when you don't know the fate of a loved one. Emily, thanks. We have more team coverage on Hurricane Dorian just ahead. We'll be live on the Georgia coast as residents evacuate, and live in Henry County at Atlanta Motor Speedway, where Dorian evacuees can go for shelter due to the powerful storm. Right now, a good time to download the Fox 5 Storm Team weather app. There you can track the forecast right on your smartphone. You'll have access to live radar and real-time hurricane alerts. It's free for both Apple and Android users.
I'm Laura Neal in Gwinnett County, where a woman opens the door and is shot and killed. Police are searching for who's responsible and for a motive. What neighbors have to say about the woman and the incident coming up.
The police now have a suspect in custody for a deadly stabbing. Hear how an argument over the last several days has now led to a 14-year-old being behind bars.